Welcome back, everyone. We are here again on YouTube and LinkedIn with another exciting episode of the Top Innovator Series. This is where we dive into game-changing strategy, brilliant leadership ideas, and of course, we hear from the very smart minds behind all of that. My name is Josef Martens, and I'm excited to introduce our guest today. With us today is Garrett Olin. Garrett is the CIO at Shasta Community Health Center. Before that, he held C-suite tech roles with organizations in both the federal government and in the private sector. And today, we're thrilled to have Garrett with us. Garrett, it's a real pleasure to have you here today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here. Thank you for the invitation.
Garrett, you've reached a point that not everyone reaches. You're clearly very successful. You've gone a long way in the journey of being a tech executive. When you look at your own journey, what do you think are some of the reasons for the success that you've had?
Well, I think that the biggest thing is just the undying want to continually learn and improve. You know, that wanting to know, why is this happening the way it is, or how can I improve this, or I understand this is how things are done, but how can we do it better?
Is this a desire you've always had, or did you come to a point where you realized this would be helpful and you want to cultivate that?
I think I've always kind of had it, the being inquisitive and trying to understand, how things work, or how the interactions between different departments and processes and things like that. So that want for knowledge, I guess, and learning about, the different areas that maybe I touch on, but aren't really what I do. I still think it's important to get that understanding to have a better process.
Do you find that this is something that can be shared in a team, or something that can be nurtured in a team, so that they also develop that mindset? Or is your sense this is something people either bring to the table or not?
You can definitely bring it into a team. I've done that in the past in my history, that maybe the team had, coming into a spot, the team might be a little complacent, or sitting on their laurels, thinking that they've done a great job, and things may be working well for what they are currently doing, right?
But yeah, great point, right? Being comfortable could always be the stopping point, right? Not with bad intentions, but with the success that's been created already.
Right. Yeah. And, technology evolves so quickly. You can't just sit on your hands and say, well, we're doing well today. It's, are you going to do well tomorrow?
So how do you poke the team? How do you get the team? How do you kick that fire back on?
It's building relationships, and being a leader is showing them and doing those things. I hear often it's my predecessor or predecessors never did this, right? It's walking down and doing the walkabout in the different departments or within my own teams and things like that, of getting a pulse of how's the day going, right? Being visible, being open and honest, and communicating amongst them that here's some things that I'm seeing that I think excuse me, we can do better. Here's some things that we're doing well, right? When there's the tech side, right, is a lot of times you're working when the business isn't, and showing up on a weekend and working with the team, right? They never expect the C-suite to do that. And when I show that passion of wanting to make sure that things are working well, and wanting to make sure they have a work-life balance, it becomes somewhat infectious.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
They start looking out for each other as well. And volunteering, well, I'll work this weekend, you don't have to, or something along those lines for others within the department. Um, they just start picking up on what you're doing as a leader, uh, how you handle irate customers or
Mm.
uh, end users and things like that, right? Just different things that they'll pick up on it over time and then start emulating some of that.
I like that phrasing, the infectious quality of leadership. What do others pick up, and what can where the spark can fly over? Let me take a different look at your leadership journey from a different perspective. I imagine you had trusted advisors, mentors, or role models on your journey, and you picked something up from them. Either you learned something or you saw something that resonated, that was important to you. What's something that was so important that it still sticks with you today?
Uh, I guess really two things. You can't be successful if you're not willing to risk some failures, right?
Okay.
You have to reach a bit, and sometimes you fail, but if you don't reach, it's hard to improve. And the other is if you don't ask, the answer is already no.
Yeah.
Um, so build up your use case, business case, whatever, and ask for what you think is truly needed. And just don't think that, well, they're tight on the budget this year, so I shouldn't ask for it even though we need it. Just, the answer is always no if you don't ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if you start off what might be move number 7 in the chess game, that's useful for chess, but not in an
Yeah.
organization, right? You just want to think about move 1 and hope it works out, and do your best to make it work out. Now, failure, so many, and I'm including myself here, don't want to fail. Right? I don't like failure. I really want to avoid
Oh, I
it.
don't like it either.
Exactly, right? So how do we avoid that sense that we have, that negative connotation of failure? Who wants to fail, right? So how do I overcome that?
So as a leader, at least for my teams, I use the failure as a learning experience, right? And there's growth there in doing that. From a personal perspective, again, we don't like to fail, right? I don't like to fail, um, but it's I go back to the I don't know how true the story is or whatever about Edison and having a reporter ask him what he's learned because he's failed 10,000 times trying to create this light bulb, and he says, well, I found 10,000 ways not to do it. Right? So um failure is not always a bad thing, is you just have to manage the risk.
Yeah. I just want to see the CEO's reaction to that comment. I'm not sure it's going to be as embracing as Edison.
Well, that's where you build those relationships, and
Yeah.
your failures are far and few in between, but you know uh, I've always had uh, really good relationships where I could just say that there's some risk involved, but I think it'll be fine. And every now and then it just didn't quite work, but you pivot and you make the best of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Garrett, we talked about the past. Let's take a look at today. And again, not a question about organizations or projects, still about your leadership journey. When you look at where you are today, what's an area that you would like to focus on because you see there is room to grow, there is more that can be had, there is another level?
um Obviously artificial intelligence is an area that everybody's getting into, right? Or they say they're already into. And um, I see a lot of vendors that say that their product now has AI, but really they just added the 2 letters to their brochure. Um, but I think that's an area that obviously is going to continue to grow for a bit, and there's plenty of use cases to improve businesses and what have you, processes. Um, Personally, it at some point it might be nice to be a CEO. Uh, in a large organization. I've been that with some smaller ones, but that's at this point in the career is not necessary, right?
Yeah.
It's just one of those uh, bucket list things that would have been nice, but doesn't necessarily have to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And the possibility to grow is always there, right? There's really
Right. Yeah.
our ability
You can
to
always
develop.
grow without a title. So
Absolutely. And that as well. Now, when you look at the leadership situations that you encounter or have encountered, what is a situation where you were really surprised by something, where you thought you have an idea of what's going to happen, you have a clear plan, you think how this is going to end, and it went totally different?
um, I guess it's some it's funny. Like I say, I try to understand different areas. So at one point in my career, I used to try to poke my finger in everybody else's pie just to see what's going on, and uh, so I would test our application, but try to see if I could break it. Right? What if the end user did this or did that? And it used to drive my hardware team nuts because I'd
Yeah.
always find a way to break it.
Yeah.
Um, but over time, they realized that they would then ask me to test it because
Hmm.
if anyone could break it, I could.
Then it
And
was
if I
you.
couldn't, then maybe they're doing something right. Um, so it's those unexpected things of you do something out of sequence and everything shuts down. It's like well, potentially an end user could do that. So let's try to find a way to minimize that risk.
I like the example. It sounds like this almost turned into a game or a friendly competition, right? Who can outsmart the other one in terms of
Kind of,
getting it
yeah,
right or breaking it? Yeah. And that's a challenge that a lot of technologists happily embrace, right? Sort of
sure.
outsmarting the other ones. Nice example.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the future for a moment, Garrett. Let's imagine we were to have this conversation again in 5 years, and we talk about what has changed in leadership recently. What do you think we'll talk about? And I know AI is a big topic, of course, but focusing on leadership, what do you think is going to change in leadership?
Um, I think there's so many different leadership styles, right? Um, but I think in time it'll transform into just a few to be successful. Uh, at least I think. Uh, the being directive, authoritarian, even somewhat collegial. It can get you to a point, but it can't get you to high performance.
Hmm.
So I think as time evolves, I think the leadership styles will kind of flesh out more to say that this is here's the handful of styles only that really can get you high performing teams. Um, versus yeah, you can get a team to perform, but it just may not be performing well or as good as it could.
What leadership style would you advocate for? Or is there such a thing as a favorite leadership style?
Yeah, well, yeah, everybody says transformational, right?
Okay.
But yeah, I tend to say that it is more situational, um, in the fact that, uh, in my opinion, a good leader, knowing their team, realizes that Joseph, I need to deal with you in a particular way versus
Yeah.
dealing with Dan or
Yeah.
Carl or Susan, right? Um, and what's the situation of the day, right? If something blew up, you might have to be a little more directive.
Mhm.
Uh, but in other cases, maybe it is collegial, or democratic in a sense, right? But uh, my style over the years has really been hear my team, get input, even from the end users, right? Because they're the ones that are closest to how everything works, and they know all the workarounds of broken processes. Um,
Yeah.
so allow the input and use that data with other data that you may have available to make the best informed decision. Um, but again, the team understands that the decision rests with me or the senior leadership team or what have you, but at least they were heard,
Yeah.
and their concerns or what have you were addressed, and but a direction still has to be chosen.
Yeah.
So,
They had the opportunity to have their influence, and the final decision is at another place.
yeah, and I always tell my team I don't know everything, right? So whatever I'm thinking, I could be wrong, and basically tell me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take it personal. It's we need to do what's best for the organization.
Yeah.
So if I'm off base because I misunderstood something, just let me know.
Yeah. Garrett, let me ask you a last question, and then we're going to wrap it up. If you could change one thing about how many leaders are leading, if you had a magic wand and you could change it, make it go away, transform it maybe, or do something with it, what would that be?
Um, I don't know how you want to. It's kind of a couple different things, but it leads to just building that trust, right? With whether it's with your uh, leadership team or the teams that you lead or the end users or customers or vendors. Um, yeah, you have to build that trust, and they have to build that trust with you as well, right? Um, again, I don't know how others do things, right? And I mean, there's a million ways you can do whatever. Uh, but one of the things when I walk into the organization and meet with my team is, there are things that happen at work that it can affect your personal life.
Mm,
If that's happening, let me know, and we can see how we can adjust things. But
okay.
there's also things that happen in your personal life that can affect the work. And again, I don't have to have all the details, but let's have the trust to where you feel comfortable enough to come and let me know to see what we can do. But if I don't know about it and I just see your performance being hindered, right, it's bad for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
helpful.
so having that trust to be able to and I've had people come to me with some really personal things, but it's that trust that we have in each other, knowing that I'm not going to uh, overreact or make a demand that they can't meet. It's how can we work together, right? Because I'd rather keep your institutional knowledge within the organization and keep us functioning well than say, well, this isn't working out. Now I have to go hire
Mm,
somebody and train them and lose all that knowledge.
yeah. Yeah. Garrett, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you in the conversation here.
Well, thank you again. I really enjoyed it.
To everyone else out there, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Join us again for our next episode. And most importantly, as always, keep your brain cells active.